Alright, what's going on, everyone? So we got a lot to unpack this week after everything that's been happening. We had giant run-up going on right now on the S&P 500. Great start to the year, but the main question is, will it last? Well, of course, market was closed today due to President's Day. If we look at some of this economic data that we have coming out this week, we can see that we have PMI numbers coming out tomorrow along with existing home sales. And then Wednesday is the FOMC minutes. We'll get into a little bit about that. Thursday, GDP numbers, and then Friday, core PCE numbers in Michigan consumer sentiment. So we have, for the short week that we have, we're gonna be packed with a ton of amount of economic data coming out. So the main question is will this rally really last long term? Well, we kind of got that answer a little bit last week when the CPI data came out. It came out higher than expected, which was as expected. Many Fed officials, including Jerome Powell, has even spoke saying that he expects that we could possibly have multiple high inflation readings before it really does come down. Because it was so broad-based, it's going to get sticky, and we're going to continue to see these possible upside trends before we really get down. So the main question is now, are we going to continue this lower rate hike to the 5% terminal rate, or continue to kind of trend higher, or are we going to really start pushing for higher interest rates? So we could see a little bit of pullback in the market because we've been really moving on this high greed that inflation is over with, no recession, soft landing is almost imminent, and kind of seems like the Fed and the market's really been kind of out of whack lately. So these numbers this week are really going to kind of help really see where, from a perspective, we're still seeing hot economic numbers in general as far as labor market. So the Federal Reserve still has the right to go up to another 50 basis point rate hike if they wanted to, but I expect them to get to that 5 to 5.25 terminal rate percentage before they start actually really trying to change things up. And I don't expect anything too crazy from the FOMC minutes this week, just mainly due for the fact that it was the minutes from last month. So we've had a lot more data. We've obviously had the CPI data come out since then, so we could see a little bit more volatility. But be looking for those key secret words in the minutes, just mainly talking about whether higher rate hikes or if inflation sticky and stuff like that. So looking at this technical analysis here on the S&P 500, we broke out of this weekly bull flag, which is very bullish, and we're now in this short-term. We're in a short-term bullish pennant, but at the same time, on the weekly chart, we're on a really high rising wedge with possible more downside. Now, you can see the MACD is really starting to push through. We'll have to continue to see that continuation. And I think a lot of this data that we're going to get this week really kind of determines whether we start pulling back or we start kind of trying to push a little bit higher. But we're going to have a little bit of this resistance right in here on this top line. I see short term. I do see a little bit of a pullback yet again this week. Looking at the Qs, you can see that we broke out of this bull flag here, and we had this base bottom that we kept bouncing off of multiple times. We bounced that final time and broke out on the weekly. Now on the daily, we still have a little bit of a rising wedge here, so we're seeing a little bit like we're topping out a little bit. So I think a nice little pullback would be good for the market in general before we do start to kind of trend higher. Now I want to show something real quick on the daily for SPY. Alright, so you can see the cloud, this cloud right here, indicator. It's free on TradingView, by the way. You can see right here on the daily, we have this bull flag on the daily kind of breaking down right here, along with multiple trends you can see as we continue to hold down So we bounced right off of that line perfectly. We can break down a little bit below it, but we need to keep that cloud. If that cloud turns red, as you can see on previous times, we could continue to break down even higher or even lower. We possibly could even break down all the way to this 393 area before we really see some real support. Um, but I do think we do see a little bit of a pullback. I think that we continue down in this trend in the short term, and then we kind of break into even higher. And I think we do touch 420 before we start seeing a little bit lower. Now, of course, that's personal opinion. Um, a lot of this data is going to be really determining on what we could see long term. But just wanted to point out this weekly, which is a longer term frame, of course, than the daily, has a higher rising wedge, but the daily has a bull flag, so we could see a little bit of that miscorrelation along with it. Same thing on the Qs. We're seeing a little bit top out. That's why I said I like a little bit of a pullback before we continue this uptrend. Apple on the weekly has been a tear. I mean, it just completely busted through this daily support that I had, and we're just continuing to see that that continuation. Now, if we look at Apple on the daily, we can see the same thing here. We can see this stock RSI is trying to push a little bit lower, almost getting to oversold area, but you can see right here that the daily MACD is completely topped out and it's looking like it's wanting to pull back a little bit. So I mean, if we do see a little bit of a pullback, I mean, that would be really good for the market, honestly. It's really healthy, especially after this big of a rip. Come back, fill some of these gap fills, and then just kind of continue to rip higher as we continue longer. We do have a lot of earnings this week, and I will get into that and which ones I will watch. My main one I'm watching is NVDA this week. Looking at Tesla on the weekly, I mean, just straight meme stock madness. On the weekly, we had this bullish flip on the weekly cloud, very bullish long term. Stock RSI is a little bit overbought. I do think that we could see some pullback in Tesla short term. I'd like some pullback in Tesla. 200 seems to be that pretty firm range. If we could get a pullback to about 200, that'd be nice. I'd like that. Stock RSI has been kind of continually going lower, been selling off, and along with that daily MACD continuing finishing off. But we're still seeing that strength. But I mean, again, if we see a pullback in Tesla, I'm watching for that gap fill around that 150 range, which would be crazy if we did fill that. But I'm watching that long term. If we do fill that range, if we do see a big pullback on Apple, I am watching on the daily around 146-ish long-term range. Now, the one big earnings I'm watching for this week is NVIDIA. Now, you can see NVIDIA right here. We're on this just continuation up, just bouncing up multiple times. Now, that weekly is still very bullish, so long-term, more than likely going to see that continuation, but that stock RSI is very overbought. We're continuing to hit that major resistance up here. I do think that we could see some weakness in NVIDIA, and if we do this week, I would be watching that 197, 195 range if we do see some pullback. Now, again, earnings, IV is going to be really high. If you don't get in this and you're not in the money, then remember you're going to be IV crushed. If you don't know what that is, there's multiple helpful videos out there for that as well. But overall, I think short term, I think a pullback would be very good for the market in general, just mainly due to how we've been absolutely on a tear so far this year. Long term, I do see a little bit of weakness, but I think a lot of it's going to depend on inflation, interest rates, and how the recession and everything's looking as we enter that middle second year part of the year, and then along with this economic data that's going to be coming out. So if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you everybody for watching, and just God bless.